I want to say hey to our social media community. I'm excited about this one. I've had this one circled. Many of you know that I've been promoting what I called, for lack of a better term, I guess I'm trying to be over dramatic, kind of a trilogy. I wanted to, I wanted to be able to discuss uh, the things at hand, what our nation is dealing with, the racial tension that is out there. And I didn't want to do it anecdotally or in one-liners or just graphics. Nothing, none of that's bad. I've done all of it. I don't want to be hypocritical, but I wanted to do something more. I wanted to have some substantive conversation with people that I knew really had something to say and bring something to the table. I hope you got to watch myself and Miles McPherson as we talked about the sociological aspect. I talked to U.S. Senator Tim Scott about the political aspect, but this is the one that I really had circled. I got my friend, Dr. Dharius Daniels, and he deserves every one of those credentials. And we've been friends now for years. I was about 9 years ago at Ed Young's church, and I had an opening spot on my 212 conference. And I had asked God, God, show me that emerging voice. Show me who it is. And I sat out there on the second row. I wasn't a speaker till the next day. And I heard someone pick up a mic named Dharius Daniels. And in my heart, I said, that's it. That's the sound. And ever since that time, we've done a few vacations together. Our wives are good friends. And, but not only is he a friend, he's just a brilliant, brilliant mind. And I love to talk about the things of God with him. Dharius, thank you for being with me, brother.
Ron, it's my honor, man. I love you. You know, your people don't know this, that when I would come to 212, I wouldn't stay in the hotel. I'd stay in your house. I'd say, no, don't put me in a hotel. I want to stay at the house. So we consider, my wife and I consider y'all family, and we love you personally, but we just also have great respect and admiration for your ministry.
I cherish our time together. Both of our schedules are not getting any lighter, so those times get less and less. Usually we meet each other in a green room or a ready room now, and
yeah,
it's deeper than that. And I want you to know I love all my co-laborers in Christ, but every once in a while God will bring you a real brother, and Dharius and Shamika are that dust. I don't want to waste the time. To all of our viewers, I really try to keep this around 30 minutes. If it goes down the road and it goes a little longer, so be it. But I realize you can't sit around and look at computers all day for entertainment. So, Pastor Dharius, I'm going to jump right in. You're going to say, man, he went in. He didn't waste any time. I'm a kingdom preacher. You know that. I know you've changed your church to Change Church, but you have a kingdom background, a kingdom theology, kingdom Christocentric perspective, I think, of church and church life. And there is a first Adam and there's a second Adam. And I've always told people you're in one or you're in the other. A lot of people don't know this. I think it's in Matthew chapter 3, when the genealogies are being discussed. The word of God calls Adam the son of God. Adam, the son of God. And then the Bible calls Jesus the begotten son of God. That there's a first Adam. 1 Corinthians 15 says one is a man of the flesh, and the second one's the man of the spirit, a heavenly man. So I've always told people, you're really either in the first Adam or you're in the second. It has been my theological perspective that I'm open for you to change. I'm open for it because I trust you. It has always been my perspective that when we were born again of the second Adam, the last Adam, Jesus Christ, that it was God bringing everybody to that thing we seek. I heard you say something when you talked about privilege I thought was powerful. You said we're trying to create a level, I don't know your exact words, a launching place, not level outcomes. The Bible doesn't even teach level outcomes, but equal when it comes to an opportunity and a launching pad. I thought that was a powerful distinguishment. I have always thought that in the kingdom, God wanted a classless society, and it was the one place where the pecking order had literally been removed. There's neither male nor female, Greek nor Jew, bond nor free, and I could go on and on with that. But then I had a brother the other day, whom I love dearly, say, I don't want you to look at me and say I don't see color. I have said that. I don't look at you right now and say, there is my black friend Dharius. I say, there's my friend Dharius. But he said, I want you to see how God has distinguished me as a man of color and embrace me and that identity. That challenged me because I had always been trying to get to the place I didn't see it. Talk to me on your perspective.
Well, so first of all, I want to be clear on this. I agree with you both. So okay. I do agree that the vision for humanity that Paul paints, that God intends and Paul describes in Galatians, is a classless society. Now, let me be clear. Class is a social construct, exactly, not a kingdom construct. So whether it's economic, whether it's race, whether it's gender, when Paul describes life being done the king's way, those cultural classes are deconstructed in the kingdom, and people's value is not determined by them. So I agree with you 100% there. I agree with the other brother in this sense, and I'll start from this place, and that is God's original design has always been a diverse design. So in the animal kingdom, pre-sin, it's diversity. In the plant kingdom, pre-sin, it's diversity. And then when he creates Adam and Eve, there's distinction between the two. So diversity, and watch this, and even in, depending on where someone lands on this, so if you don't land here theologically, let's not fight about that, just throw the analogy away. But so if someone believes in the Trinity, well, in the Trinity, there's distinction. So wherever you land, whether it's distinction in roles, whether it's distinction in person, whatever, the point that I'm making is you see that distinction. And so for me, I do believe that yes, there should be distinction. We shouldn't be defined by it.
Okay, good.
we shouldn't be defined by it. It shouldn't be the way I'm defined. It shouldn't be the way you're defined. It shouldn't be the way we are seen. And I think what you're pointing to is something that when you talk about a classless kingdom, you're pointing to the way sin misuses and abuses. That when I say sin, the sin nature, the way it misuses and abuses these distinctions and creates.
Speak to that. Speak to that right there. How has sin misused the distinction and got us to where we are now?
100%. So a couple of ways. So the first of which is this. So the sin nature in human hearts produces a desire for power and control. And that's the purpose of classes. That's what class is all about. It's about who's in power and who isn't.
Yeah.
Come on. And whether it's money, so economics, gender, or race, everyone is attempting to climb to that upper echelon and get to that quote unquote ruling upper class, whatever that is, whether it's economic, gender, race, or whatever, because that's the place you got power. Okay. So you got it, sin producing that in one sense. Now, this is what happens. That sinful nature and need for power will produce informal and formal practices and policies that maintain it for one group and keep it at a distance from another.
That's good. Keep going.
Yep. And so now you go from sin in a heart that impacts the way you treat me to sin in a system which impacts the way people treat us.
People, yep.
People, right? And so the challenge with the system is the origin of it could have been intended for one thing. People who perpetuate it may not even know its origin. Yet and still they are contributing to something that was intended to keep power with one class and not with another.
I think I can't be fact checked. I hadn't Googled it. I don't have statistics. I think you're probably speaking where a lot of our white brothers and sisters are. I think that a lot of people may contribute or keep a continuation of a system that leads to this, maybe not even cognizant of the fact that they do it. I don't know that I've met many people that just don't like black people or I just don't like white people. I haven't run up on many of those. But there may be people that continue in their everyday life operating in a system that is doing this and keeps it that way without ever challenging it. Do you think maybe a little bit of that we've got an opportunity right here? I know there's a lot of tension and a lot of mad and a lot of hurt feelings, but Dharius, I'm hopeful. I see people coming to the table I've never seen come to the table. I've seen people talking I've never seen talk. Listen, I've seen cops calling out cops, and that blue blood runs deep. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing things happen that I've never seen in my 30 years happen or in my 51-year lifetime. So are you hopeful that maybe we have a window here to move it?
I am African American, and I'm hopeful. So that's, and I think that distinction is important. And so when people ask me that question, I've been asked a lot, how are you doing? And my response is, I'm more hopeful than I've ever been.
I am too.
Because, and it is not an uninformed hope, Pastor, right? It's not this blind optimism. Yeah, I am hopeful because of what I'm seeing. I'm hopeful because of what I'm hearing. I am seeing people, as you said, come to the table and show up for the fight.
It's never been there.
Ways that I never have, and from camps that I never have.
Yes, sir.
And so I do believe we have more than a little opportunity. We have a huge opportunity here. And I believe, and I'm not just over spiritualizing this, that God is at work. Now, let me tell you what I mean, Pastor, because part of what Jesus did was expose the insufficient and sometimes oppressive nature of the religious system of his day.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, he's turning tape. He comes in, when he goes into the temple, Pastor, he turns tables over. Now, he runs money changers out, but he turns tables over. Why? Because they had taken something that was intended to operate one way, right? Just get temple currency. And they changed that into a method of exploitation. And Jesus is like, okay, I got to turn this over. This is supposed to be, this was my Father's intent with this. Mm-hmm. Now you have made it, should be a house of prayer, you made it into a den of thieves. You created something completely different than my Father intended. I think that's what happened. That's what happens with race and distinction. God's like, I created this to show you the beauty of my creation, the beauty of my design. Now you have taken this and you have created classes, and you've created distinctions, and you've created haves and haves not, and based on something that I never said should have been a criteria for that. Now this is going to be a little controversial because you got grace factors and things of that particular nature. But even in the kingdom of God, Pastor, there are not equal outcomes.
Yes, that's true.
And that's what I'm in
total agreement with that.
Yeah,
we're equal, but we're not identical.
Yes.
We don't have the same stuff.
Yes. And it doesn't mean that a person's worth more or not.
Yes.
But you just see that. You see, there are a lot of Jewish men that could have been picked, but God picked Daniel. And so Daniel's working with kings, and Nehemiah is working with kings, and Esther is in, they're pretty Jewish women, but it was Esther. So even in the scriptures, you don't see equal outcomes. And so whether you're the 5 talent, 2 talent, and 1 talent, whatever you got is grace. Whatever you got, you don't deserve. Whatever you have, it should lead you to humility, right? If you got 5, Lord, you gave me this much, I don't deserve it. 2, Lord, you gave me this much, I don't deserve it. But I feel like we kind of use that criteria, or use, like, for the purpose of this conversation, race, to determine starting points. And that was never God's intention.
Right.
God, no, we aren't going to always end up in the same place here on earth. And Pastor, we could even talk about even in heaven, there aren't equal outcomes.
You can talk about anything you want to. I'm good. Let me ask you this question. Okay. Because I have been, I've taken the whooping of it, but I've also taken the blessings of it. And I guess the whoopings come with the blessings. I've been that guy that's been fortunate enough to cross over. I would take nothing for that. I would take nothing for that. That is so precious to me. And it's a trust that I've been given, and I protect it at all costs. Having said that, racism is not new to our culture today. Mm-hmm. Jesus, when he said, I must needs go to Samaria, there is the realization of that. I'm preaching on that this Sunday. I'll give it away. Jesus set up a tense racial encounter. Mm-hmm. So, the Good Samaritan. Who do you think was his neighbor? That we call it the Good Samaritan. If they're good Samaritans, it must mean there's bad ones. Samaritans, another place Samaritans were called dogs. When Jesus showed up, the woman immediately said, you being a Jew have no dealing with us. Right. So you mean you gonna put your lips to the same cup I put my lips to? Now, in other words, you could feel the tension every time a Samaritan came up. They were Assyrians when they attacked Israel. They intermarried. The Jews resented that. The Jews thought they were superior. The Jews called them dogs. And notice when Jesus went and said, I got to go through Samaria, a place that I would usually go around, I got to go to.
That's right.
And then when he said, I go to it, he sent the disciples into town to buy food because all the disciples were super Jews. Mm-hmm. And he knew they were not ready for what he was about to do. It had to be already done, and then they come back and see it. Mm-hmm. But what I saw Jesus do, I said, I'm trying to break this scripture down without getting Greek and Hebrew. Jesus, all she knew about Jesus, Dharius, is he's just a kind man. He's just a kind man. We trying to get our theology heard, but I'm wondering, is my sociology going to have to cross the bridge before my theology can be spoken? Because Jesus just became a kind man at a well before he ever started calling out her improprieties.
Yes. Yes.
Speak to that. I'm just wondering. The sociology of how we can bring it together.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like what I would say is that when your theology is working right, meaning when you understand Christianity as God intends, then you understand that the evidence of it, the outworking of it, affects your sociology. It changes the way you deal with people. It changes the way you see them, and it changes the way that you treat them. And so I think Jesus modeled this in John 4 with the woman at the well. He modeled it he modeled John 4 with the woman at the well. And you're right, there was ethnic tension between Jews and Samaritans. Very, very just great ethnic tension that existed there. And so Jesus, he models that. And I believe I want to say something here. I believe that because he got that part right, that is what's responsible for the great harvest that came at the end of that encounter, when all of those men came to the city. And this is why I am so adamant and passionate about speaking to the theological side of this racism issue. Because when we don't deal with it properly, it hinders our witness in the world.
No doubt.
Yeah, it hinders the Bible says all the men of that city came to hear Jesus because she said, come see a man that told me all I ever did. And so when we are not getting love right, people don't want to hear our doctrine. Yeah, and so this is why this racism issue, sometimes people say, why are you guys talking about this so much in the church? The assumption is if I ignore something, then it goes away. And we wouldn't handle the flu that way. We wouldn't handle a cold that way. We wouldn't handle a broken arm that way. And that's not the way God has called us to handle this issue. So I really feel like 100% that because Jesus got that part right on the front end, then he was able to have that spiritual effectiveness dealt with on the back end. And I don't know. Now, Pastor, I'm going to speak specifically now for, this is one of my passions. I'm speaking specifically now for the way racism affects evangelism. There's a statistical trend with millennials, but you see it specifically playing out in African-American community. Because what happens is it creates an evangelistic obstacle. And when you're telling people, come see a man, people are interpreting that as, come be a part of a spiritual family that does not treat me as equal, that will not weep when I weep, that will not go to bat for me the way I believe I should be going to bat for. That's going to be that's going to have apathy, and at sometimes going to be condescending toward me and dismissive of me when I'm sharing my pain with them. You know, when I say, hey, this is happening to us in this world, this is happening to us in this country. Love believes all things. Will you believe me? And so this is one of the reasons the church has to talk about this, and we've got to get it right. And part of it means getting a holistic biblical theology where you understand that my relationship with God transforms my relationship with humankind. And John goes so far to say that the evidence of your authentic conversion is whether or not you got hate in your heart for your brother.
Exactly. How can you love God whom you have not seen and
That's
not
it.
love your brother who you've had? And Jesus, when the disciples got back, I promise I'm not trying to preach Sunday's message, but it's in me right now. When the disciples got back, Jesus made this statement. I've never saw it till this week. He said, you say 4 months into the harvest. He was talking about natural. He said, you guys thinking that we got 4 more months until we bring the harvest in. He said, I'm telling you to lift up your eyes because the fields are right unto harvest. Who did he tell them to look at? Samaritans. He says, you guys are looking for people like you to go win to me. I'm telling you to lift up your eyes. Who's in front of you? Yes. Samaritans, whom you do not like, who racially you try to distance yourself from, ethnically you look down on and refer to them as dogs. I'm telling you, your harvest is not around them. Your harvest is right here. And so immediately, John chapter 4, out of the gate, God sets up an ethnic encounter and tells the super Jews, this is your harvest. And he points to Samaritans. I love it because he comes out the gate and smacks that thing right in the face.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what is needed. I know we're running down on this 30 minutes, and I knew me and you would, because when we get going, we can talk all the time. But I want to give you a chance to get the comments in that you want to. That's why I've got you here. But something that has lasted, 400 years here? 400 years. You know, if you have a sickness that's lasted 400 years, a quick trip to CVS usually ain't going to cure it. Usually it's going to take some type of surgery or we're not going to cure this in one election. We're not going to cure this in the next few days. We're not going to cure this in some protests or some church services. But if you had an audience with your white brother and sister counterparts who you love, what would you say we could do that would bring the most healing to our black brothers and sisters? What can I, not as a preacher, not as an apostle, what can I do as a man that lets you know that when you walk away from me, that man gets it. Ron gets it. He cares about me. He heard me and he gets it. How do I communicate that to you, Dharius?
Very good. I think the parable of the Good Samaritan provides a blueprint for us. Because that Good Samaritan, when that man who fell among thieves was a Jew.
Yes. And
the religious leaders of that in that passage got it wrong. They walked past it. Doctrine right, love wrong. That's a whole nother conversation there, right? In terms of what is it in our theology that has kind of made us walk past this issue as Christians for so long, and in some cases be complicit in it. But this is a few things that he did. I'm just going to share two. One, he had empathy for this brother. And this is what I mean. I think I mentioned this earlier. Empathy is a willingness to enter into the pain of another, even when it is an experience you can't understand.
That's good.
Right? It is the outworking of 1 Corinthians 12:26. It is my willingness to weep with those who weep, not weep as they weep, because I don't know what it is to feel what you feel.
Right.
But I love you so much that it hurts me that you hurt. I don't even know if you remember this. Charlottesville happened. That Saturday night, I was preaching somewhere in another part of the country. My phone rang, it's you. And you called me, you say, Dharius, I didn't even know this still existed like this. I'm so sorry. That's what you said. What does empathy communicate? It communicates love. It says, I care. And the reason that I'm emphasizing that, for some people, it seems that would seem like something that's so easy, so inconsequential. But Pastor, as an African-American Christian, I would say, when it comes to race issues, we felt dismissed and disbelieved for so long. Empathy is a great place to start because it says, I believe you. I believe you. So you may not always know what to say. You don't have to have all the answers because we're African-American. We don't have all of the answers, but a willingness to say, I see this and I see you and I'm entering into this pain with you. That's one, empathy. And then the next thing the Good Samaritan did is he had more than empathy. He moved from empathy to advocacy. What did he do? He used his resources. That was his denarii. He used his ability. If you read the text, he wraps the man's wounds with bandages, pours oil and wine on it, and he used his influence. He had a conversation with the innkeeper and said, now listen, trust me. I'm going to give you a little bit of money up front. If he stays here longer than what I've given you, when I come back through, I'm going to take care of it. So he used his influence. Now, all of us have different resources. We got different ability. We got different influence. But whatever amount God's given us, we must be willing to, I would encourage everybody to use it to make life more equitable for somebody else. That's so important. See, at your church in South Carolina, you had an outreach center. Yep. You didn't just, so you did overseas work. Yep. But you did not skip over the inner city. No. To help people overseas. Right. I'm telling you that happens in a lot of churches, Anglo churches. Yes. And I'm not saying they're unconcerned. I think many of them are unaware. And so that's an example. When I say resources, it's like, yes. And I had this podcast, this really, really influential business leader. I was so encouraged by him inviting me on. And we kind of talked about this and what this looks like even for the business community. And I was like, man, just your, not only a business leader's willingness to invest resources, but like your ability, your know-how, your skill, management programs, entrepreneurial trainings, all of these things that can be done for a community that's been neglected and
transform it. Transform it. They have the power to transform communities.
100%. Yes. Yeah. So that's what I would say. It's going to look different for everybody, but everybody's got to be willing to use those three things that they have to advocate. And I think those two things make a major difference.
That's helped me. That really has helped me. I make a commitment to be time conscious because I want people to be able to stay dialed in. Last comments to you. You gave me your time. I want you to get the last words in there. Decent size audience. Knowing advertising you is going to bring a bigger audience. What? I don't know. I don't want to lead you. I want you to be able to say what you want to. But A, B, C minus, C plus, B plus. Is the church, are we grading all right in how we're responding to it? Or do we need to pick it up a little bit? Or is there a fear among my black brothers and sisters that it's going to be another one of those, stays on the radar a little while and goes right back to the unconcerned? I just feel like this time it's going to be different. What say you?
Well, this is what I say. I say, for most of us, we have a cautious optimism.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, we are seeing. This is what we are seeing people not just say things. We're hearing what people are saying, and we're seeing that some people are finally seeing. And so because they're seeing a pattern and not just isolated incidents, we're hopeful that this will be a sustained effort, Pastor, to address, here it is, no African American I know is naive enough to think we can eradicate racism in the human heart any more than we can eradicate greed. That's not what we're after, per se. Now, we do have issues when we say, hey, we think a lot of Anglo leaders have underestimated how much this exists in hearts that are sitting in their pews each week, so they aren't speaking to it enough.
I may be guilty of that.
Yeah.
Call, I didn't remember that till you brought it up. Remember that call? That was a factual statement I told you. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I think I kind of got in a cross-cultural bubble
Mm-hmm.
and thought that the whole world was like what we were experiencing.
Yeah.
And it's not. And
yeah.
And that shook me, and I called you. I'm like, man, we still here?
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah, we're still here, but you've got to be tired from telling us over and over again, us, and I'm putting myself numbered with them, your white brothers and sisters, you know, how this is hurt, how this is affected, how it can be systemic and privileged. But I want to tell you, don't get tired of saying it, because I think some of us are just now getting it for the first time. And I don't want you to be tired of telling me, because there might have been a time you were saying it to us, but I heard, but I didn't listen.
Yeah.
I think now there's a listening ear that's taking place, because when my white brothers call me and they're saying, we got to do something about this, not sure what to do. But like you said, my empathy, my resources, my influence, I'm going to take my little world and I'm going to turn it in that direction. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting. And Pastor, what that will, yes, if this is taught on more and people understand that as a Christian, we all got things in our heart that we may not be aware of and God wants to deal with, that will help deal a little bit with racism. The major issue, and this is what we want people to get, because oftentimes I hear people say things like, only Jesus can fix this, that's racism, right? But the fruit of racism is injustice. Mm-hmm. And that is what you cannot open the Bible and not see you got an obligation for, right?
No.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Yeah.
And that's what we're after. We're not saying we're going to rid the world of racism. We're saying we can minimize injustice. We can make life more equitable. We can overturn some of these systems. I put it this way: if we both walking through the mall and somebody looks at, which we have, and we're with our lives, God bless us. But we walking through the mall and someone sees Ron and someone sees Dharius, and they think highly of Ron and not as high as Dharius because of the color of my skin. Ron, that affects my life in no way whatsoever. I don't know what he's thinking. It doesn't affect me. That could be racism in his heart. It does not impact my life. Now, when that is acted upon, when I'm trying to get a loan, when my kid's trying to get in school, when you pull me over as a police officer, when you treat me when it comes to medical care, if you follow me around the store, when that happens, now it adversely affects my life. Right. That's injustice. And
that's when you feel it. That's when you feel it. That's when you feel oppression.
Yes.
Feel it coming down on you.
Yep.
And I get it. This has been so helpful. Last comments.
Yep. And so I would just say, I'm going to say this, Pastor. I think it needs to be. There are three groups of people in this, that when it comes to this issue. One group, they get it before we say anything. There's another group that's not going to get it, no matter what we say. The group in the middle is the group that will get it based on if we say it and how we say it. So I just want to speak to the people in the middle and tell you, thank you for being open. Thank you for showing up to the fight. You have reinvigorated people like me who've been fighting this battle long before some of this stuff got filmed on TV. I've been fighting in back rooms and green rooms and seminary campuses and working, trying to correct some of this theology that I think had some blind spots in America. And I want to tell those in the middle who don't even have the answers, but who are tuned in and saying, I'm ready to listen, I'm ready to learn, and whatever little resources I have, ability I have, and influence I have, I'm ready to get in this fight because it matters to God and it matters to God's people. I just want to say, we see you. I see you. And we appreciate it, and I believe God sees it. And I think history is going to look back on this moment and see a drastic turn that took place in the church and then for our nation.
So well said. And I want to tell you, and I'll say this publicly, I don't care where the chips fall, I'm sorry that it took this. It should not have taken a message this loud to get my attention, to get our attention. And but I do know good, solid people who have never been involved before, who don't have a clue what to do.
Yeah.
But that's the posture they've taken. I'm a student, teach me, let me learn, and then I'm gonna hook my little wagon up to this. And I don't know how much influence I got, but I'm willing to use it to make this better because it's unacceptable. And right now, that invigorates me too, as a guy who's tried to be a bridge builder. Look, man, I love you guys. That's why I asked Dr. Dharius Daniels to come on with me, because he don't just know what to say, he knows how to say it. And I'm grateful for that. I'm going to sign off, man. Much love to you. Tell the whole family that I said hey, and I hope I get to see you real soon. Thank you for sharing this time with me, Doc. Appreciate it.
Love you, Ron. Appreciate it.
Take care. Blessings.